All right, Florida State 35-32. Big win in the Cheez It Bowl over the Oklahoma Sooners. We finally break the Sooner curse and get the win over OU. It did not come easy. This is First Impressions right after the game, our instant analysis show. Please drop a comment and let us know your thoughts on the game. We'd love to give you a shout out here on the broadcast. You know the gentleman well, Pat Burnham, one of our recruiting analysts, one of our football analysts, and Charles Fishbein, our recruiting scouting expert and our analyst here at the Osceola.com. Mark Salva is partying at Camping World Stadium. He's done a great job all year long, and I think we should let him enjoy his evening. And you can expect him on Seminole sidelines here coming up soon later on this week to get his.
Fish has some big shoes to fill.
He does. Well, we knew we had to have Fish on this. Guys, 35-32. Let's open it up to just your initial thoughts watching the game, good and bad, before we get and break down the rest of the contest.
Well, the thing I take away is what I've taken away from this team all year. It's resilient. They have resolve. They were down 17-11, came back, finished the game in the fourth quarter with 17 points. We've seen resolve from this team all year. Even when they lost the games, we saw them come back against Clemson, come back against Wake to make those close games. So I'm not surprised by the resolve. Listen, we knew it was going to be – they had a chance to be dynamic on offense against Oklahoma, and they were big play after big play. And obviously Oklahoma's defense had struggled all year against the big play. I think for me, and I think it's going to be the same for you and Fish, what surprised me, even though Oklahoma is one of the better rushing teams in the nation, they came in averaging 213 yards per game, ran for 260. And, if you want to – but listen, I think we got to look at this in context too. Oklahoma has won 11 or 12 ball games 6 of the last 8 years. And, they were missing some guys, both starting tackles on offense, and I think that everybody thought that gave FSU a huge advantage. I think what we found out on the Oklahoma side of things, maybe they're a little deeper than we thought. But listen, first 10-win season for FSU since 2016. What a year. Wins over LSU, Miami, Florida, now Oklahoma. Throw out the records. Those are 4 of the biggest brands in college football along with Florida State. So, listen, what a great way to cap off a great season for Florida State.
Yeah, no question. Listen. I mean, I've been going to Florida State games since 1980. First game I ever went to was the Orange Bowl, where they lost to Oklahoma. I really started to believe they were never going to beat the Sooners. I'm like, what the heck? They finally get a Sooner team that they're a lot better than them, and I'm like, this is not meant to be playing Oklahoma. But like you said, Pat, they've been resilient all year. They once again proved to be resilient tonight. They got down. But it just shows you it's hard to get to 9-10 wins. This is a good football team. I've always said, and I've been consistent with this, teams that win 10 ball games didn't get there by luck. This is a good team. They are resilient, but they also do a lot of good things on both sides of the ball when they need to. You saw, even though we'll talk about it more, but even though they struggle at times on defense, certain guys stepped up. And overall is a big win for the Seminoles.
Yeah, listen, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, really just to ditto what both of you said in terms of we were all surprised the way Oklahoma played. I think, I had a buddy text me before the game. He said, do you think Florida State wants to be here as much as Oklahoma? Because OU, a blue blood, a proud program, has been hearing for the last 4 weeks that they're going to get pounded in this game by Florida State, that they're going to have to come into what is a virtual road game for them. You got to put some respect on their name too. I think those kids for the Sooners played with a chip on their shoulder. It was obvious from the get-go when the game started. But I thought the Noles weathered them down. Continue to fight. It wasn't a perfect game. A lot of issues they're going to have to fix in the offseason. I think we all agree on that, and we can talk about that later on in the show. But overall, 10 wins, like Fish said, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, right, that we were wondering what in the world was going on with FSU and their inability to even get to 6 games. We're far away from the Hail Mary that Jacksonville State had against the Bulls just a couple of seasons ago. So, Pat, all smiles from me here.
Yeah, listen, this football team has come such a long way since Mike took it over 3 seasons ago. there were a lot of you could say it was not an aesthetically pleasing win, but at the end of the day, this team made more plays than Oklahoma. They had 18 plays in this game of over 10 yards, 7 runs, 11 passes of over 15 yards, and we thought that would be the strength of FSU's offense coming into this matchup, and they took advantage of that. Listen, Jordan Travis, another career game. Johnny Wilson, a career game. Offense did what it was supposed to do. They kept their end up in the bargain, and listen, at the end of the day, defense made enough plays to win the ball game.
No doubt. Listen, I've been critical of Jordan. I have my beliefs about him as a quarterback. He did have a great game today. If he didn't play like he did, FSU would have lost the game. Honestly, he held the offense together. There was a lot of mistakes, and you saw it. Like, he didn't panic, and that's the leader of a football team, is that he was able to keep these guys in check and continue to make plays, even when guys let him down. I felt like, Johnny Wilson let him down on a big touchdown potential catch that could have probably opened the game up for FSU. So he continued to come, and the players followed, and that's what leaders do. And he did his job, and it was a great game from him, and it's an exciting way to go into next season.
Yeah, and really the difference in the ball game was 3rd and 4th downs in the second half. FSU was 1 of 6 on 3rd down in the first half. And if you add 4th down attempts, and they were 1 of 8, then they come back and they're 5 of 7 in the second half on 3rd down. And really, that was the difference in the ball game. They were more efficient on 3rd down, kept drives extended, and that was the difference in the ball game.
Sandy, you definitely way to go, Noles. Betty, shout out from Facebook as well. And we said it earlier. Ooh, the curse is over. You're right. There's been a lot of pain applied from Boomer Sooner to Florida State over the years. Guys, there are fans and casuals who are observers of college football who say the war chant is annoying to them, to hear it over and over and over again. If you're not a Seminole fan, Boomer Sooner is as annoying of something as you can hear. I mean, it never ends. It's like the only song their band knows how to play. It feels like it is like Pat, you were there. I mean, what was it as excruciating to hear nonstop as it was on television?
I believe this is the first game of my life I've seen Oklahoma in person. I mentioned to Bob before the game started, I really don't want to hear that song because they played it a bunch pregame. I was like, I really don't want to hear this all game. So yes, it was. I'll listen to the war chant all day.
You better never go to a USC game because it's the same thing over and over with their chants. So like I said, I've been to the Oklahoma games. I've been to 3 Orange Bowl games where they played. Even the last time they played and FSU played for the national title, it is excruciating. If you're on the side that's not winning, it makes it painful.
Yeah. Listen, and we can talk about the run defense, but they really let's talk a little bit about the pass defense. Fish. They really made Dylan Gates. They found some big plays to Mims. He had a couple long receptions, but really 14 of I believe 28, 14 and 24 for Gabriel. Very inconsistent. They could not pass block in the first half. FSU had 4 sacks, 70 tackles for losses. So even though it wasn't a perfect game by Florida State, certainly there were some bright spots on defense. Big turnover that allowed Florida State to come down and tie the game. And then, of course, the winning drive was listen, hey, let's talk a little bit about Ryan Fitzpatrick. That kid has had a tough year, and he kicks the winning field goal in this game.
Yeah, I personally thought, honestly, Norvell should have taken a shot at the end zone on that play. I got kind of nervous with him coming in a kick. I'm like, is this a smart move on his part? Because Fitzgerald has not kicked well this year, let's be honest. And that's a tough position to be put in where he has to hit the game-winning field goal, but he nailed it. Good for him. Hopefully it gives him some confidence going into next year. He's got the physical talent. He's got the leg. That's not the issue. He just, like anybody, even with pitchers in baseball, he went through a mental block, and he finally hopefully got through that.
Yeah, it was. I think. Listen, it was fun. That kid had struggled, and it was nice to see that. And of course, there were a lot of guys that got beat up and banged up, but obviously we want to pass on our thoughts to Jazz Turnentine, who went down last game of his career, was carried off on a cart. So a lot of guys got beat up in this game. It was a very physical football game, and I certainly hope the best for Jazz with whatever injury he does have.
Yeah, that was. By the way, can we just comment on that in terms of the way? I thought it stood out to me, and you too. You've been deep diving into Florida State for quite a while now. The defensive players coming up too to show him some love. to come out. That's a togetherness that I don't think we've seen in a Florida State locker room in quite a while. Surely not at the end of the Jimbo Fisher era. Willie Taggart, I think, was having some issues as well, trying to get kids to fully buy in and be together. But that was one of Mike's early, rants, is we're going to find kids who do things the right way. We're going to find kids who want to battle, who want to be here, and who want to be around each other. That moment to me was, I think, highlighting of the fact that locker room is together. And that's going to help, I think, in a lot of these close games going on in the future.
Yeah, well, listen, obviously no one opted out of this game for Florida State, which says a lot about those kids individually, how they feel about their teammates, and what Mike has done building the culture of this program. And so you certainly saw an example of that when Jazz got hurt and the whole team came on the field. They wanted to make sure they dapped him up before he left. And listen, you get credit to the kids, credit to the staff, and credit to Mike, because in this day and age, you do not see kids not opt out of games. And, Oklahoma had about 5 or 6 guys. So I think it says a lot about what Mike has done with this program, about the culture of this program. And to your point, all right, this team likes to play together. We've seen it at practice. They enjoy each other in practice. They get after it. They're competitive. But certainly where this program has come from the day Mike took it over is just remarkable. And yes, we could poke holes in this win, but there's no reason to do this. This was a coronation of a really good season for Florida State. Fish and I and you have talked about it. We thought there might be a chance for this team to win 9 games, including a bowl, right? But they exceed. I think in all honesty, they probably exceeded their own expectations. They'll never say that, but this team is 10-3 and has a lot of momentum going into the offseason. Still some work to do recruiting through February. I think they're going to ride this momentum from this game into the first weekend, first Wednesday in February. And with the portal kids, and obviously there's another portal period to go in the spring. So there was a lot of reasons to win this game. And listen, this, to your point, all right, this is the first losing season Oklahoma has had since 1998. So this was a motivated team, as you said. So I think you got to give a lot of credit to Florida State. Listen, these games are not supposed to be easy. Oklahoma, as I said, has been one of the winningest football programs last 8 years in all of college football. And this was, we kind of thought it might be a blowout because of the people they were missing, but certainly they had some guys that stepped in and played well for them. But, so this team Florida State has battled all season, even in games they've lost. And, I told Bob going into the second half, I said, what we're going to find out is what we've seen all year from this team is they have great resolve and they fight back from adversity.
Yeah. Anytime, nobody could have really even the most optimistic fan couldn't have believed that this team was going to win 10 games. There was just so much coming into the season, uncertainty with depth and, hoping Travis stayed healthy. This is the first season he's really stayed healthy other than the Louisville game where he got hurt. You need some luck too. And the team was very good. And like I said, you don't get to 10 wins by accident. I don't believe in that. I don't believe that you're lucky. You may win 1 extra game or 2, but to get to 10 in college football where there is a lot of parity, these teams are a lot closer than the average fan thinks. These teams are. And, listen, they got to 10 wins. It's a great season. Now the expectations are going to grow. So you got to get it to that next level. And that's the hardest jump. Getting here was hard. That next level because 11, 12 playing for ACC championships, that's a difficult thing to do. You got to get even better than you are now.
I want to shout out Jack's Oklahoma fan who said, you guys deserve to win the game. You were just better than us. And I think a lot of credit needs to be given to Brent Venables and just getting that team ready to play. Certainly not easy for any coach, right? When you're told your 2 starting tackles are opting out, your true freshman that you had in there also gets hurt early in the game. He's out. Your running back, multiple other guys.
Yep.
Oklahoma came to play. And I think there have been question marks. I've been, reading the Sooners clippings. There have been some question marks on Venables and whether he'd be the right fit for Oklahoma, but that guy loves Norman. He loves being a Sooner. It's in his DNA. And I think, you see some of that vintage toughness that Venables brought to Clemson's defense as their coordinator for Dabo. So credit to Oklahoma for a hard-fought game. Pat, where did this game turn, in your opinion? Where did Florida State have the moment, have the key plays to find a way to win this one?
Oh, well, I mean, listen, you go back to the turnover, and then they took the ball down for a score. And then again, third down was the difference in the second half. Florida State could not do anything on third or fourth down in the first half, and they were much better in the second half. And listen, we didn't see as many drops in the second half offensively, and they kept the ball longer, which anytime you can keep the ball away from Oklahoma, they have an explosive offense. And obviously FSU's run defense was struggling, and they didn't get out after the passer as well as in the second half as they did the first half, where they had 4 sacks. But listen, I think it's third down was the difference in the ball game.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the change of the game came because FSU stopped getting beat up front. They were bullied in the first half, and I kept texting you guys that you saw it on the first drive, that first 4th and goal from the 1. They got dominated up front on both sides of the ball. The O-line and D-line, they were getting bullied. They stopped getting bullied. They toughened up in the second half. Even if they're neutral on plays, Pat, you know that. Even if you don't get to the quarterback, but you start to put pressure on him and he starts to feel hurried, those completions now become incompletions. They become more difficult passes. They started to win some of those battles in the second half. Listen, you could get a lot of sacks, but there was a lot of plays they never even got even close to the quarterback. He had all day. So that was good that they started to win those battles up front. I thought that's where the game, outside of that turnover, I believe they started winning up front, and the game started to turn once they were able to do that.
Yeah, and Anthony Gatlin is right. The fumble was another big outside of the third down. The fumble that was caused by Marion Cooper, and that's the drive I was alluding to, where Florida State took the ball and scored to tie the ball game, and that was a turning point. And there were several turning points in this game. It was back and forth, right? It wasn't any one thing. And again, football it's going to be a battle each and every game when you're playing people that have as much talent as you do. So listen, everybody wants these perfect games. They want to see their team win 35-0, and that doesn't happen. So, we could go ahead and belabor the problems on defense all night, but we're talking about a team that just had a 10-win season.
You keep bringing up the defense. It must be bothering you.
Oh, I got people reading. Unfortunately, I'm reading the comments.
Hey, you shouldn't have read the message for us. They were heated up. So
Mark had to get in on the action here. I want to know what he's sipping on. He's feeling pretty good about himself, I think. And he's right, though. Anytime you get something like that, and the wins that you were able to accumulate against the teams you were able to get. Pat, we've talked about this on Seminole Sidelines plenty, right?
Yeah.
If you would, at the beginning of the year, one of our first shows, we said, what do we think? And everybody was in the 7-5 to 8-4 ballpark. We were like, hey, if you could beat this team and manage this team and this and that. And look at the teams that Salva has up there that Florida State beat this year. That's a good year. And I think that's something that we should celebrate for Florida State. I thought specifically the defense getting pressure was the key. Like that, it was clear OU was going to be able to move the ball, right? I think from the get-go, it was like they found advantages that they liked. They were winning 1v1s with their receivers. Mims was eating our lunch really all game long. He's an outstanding player, no doubt. But Florida State, I think, hit on the big plays defensively, right? You got to force some pressure, make more big hits, so to speak, right, against the entire drive than you give up. And it's going to be, on offense, we talk about hit more explosive than the other team does. For Florida State, it was hit more explosive defensively than you give up, right? And they got some big sacks. Verse, I thought, played pretty well for the most part, had some bright moments. And I thought Jamie Robinson was really good. In coverage, not so much, but coming down and affecting the quarterback, I thought he did a good job there too. In that,
he's a fun player to watch. There's doubt. And listen, Oklahoma did find bigger plays in the big plays in the pass game in the second half. But listen, they were scheming well. They run the ball up Florida State, and that was certainly going to open up some opportunities in the pass game. It always does, right? I mean, so, but again, I think 6 plays of over 15 yards for Oklahoma. And listen, another key was, FSU went for it twice on 4th down and did not give up any points off those things too. So, and there was a problem setting the edge. See some more comments. There was a problem setting the edge on defense, and that was certainly part of the problem. But they were scheming some plays up too. Jeff Levy's a really good offensive coordinator. But yeah, this game was back and forth. It was very exciting. I do think that a lot of people, because of the 9.5-point spread, thought it was going to be a much bigger win for Florida State. But as Mark said, a win against Oklahoma is a win.
Yeah, there's no question. My biggest issue, to be honest with you, isn't the yards. You're going to give up yards in this day and age of college football. It's the missed tackles, the mistakes, the mental mistakes, guys getting out of position. That's where I have a bigger issue because Florida State hasn't done that this year. At least they haven't done it most of the year. They've been very sound. They play gap control football. They do the things right. And some of that stuff was out of whack in the first half. They had guys just out of position, and you saw guys have a chance to make a tackle on a receiver and just bring the guy to the ground. It doesn't matter that he picked up 6 yards. Don't make 6 yards 25, 30 yards. And that was my biggest issue I have, is that at times they were sloppy on defense. They weren't doing what they did all year.
Yeah, we were talking about it in the press box, man. When you tackle somebody, you got to bring your feet with you.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't dive for every time and leave your feet every time you make a tackle. And listen, let's be honest about it. Teams don't practice tackling anymore. They tackle the donuts. They don't go live very much. I think Florida State went live 3 times in preseason camp, and obviously it's more thud and whiz during the season as far as contact is concerned. So it was it was a challenge, but they met it, and that's again. Go home with 10 wins, a lot of momentum going into the offseason. I don't know that it'll carry over to August, but it'll certainly carry over into offseason conditioning and help them fill some holes through the portal and through high school recruiting.
Yeah, they were getting, especially on third down, it was really frustrating to watch 3rd and 10 draw play, handoff, go for 15, 20. I was like, guys, especially, Oklahoma's number 2 and number 3 back. Both, I think, went over 100 yards on Florida State in the game. And that was very tough. Gabriel did a good job of extending the pocket. But again, they're going to make plays too. I remember, Pat, one of the earliest lessons you taught me when I first joined the Osceola was they've got guys on scholarship too, when I was getting mad about certain plays, and they're going to make some plays too. So.
Yes, I remember the play. It was against Louisville, and I said, this is what's going to happen. Oh, that's when you thought the guy should have made the play on the ball. And I was like, well, that receiver for Louisville is going to play in the pros. It was Tutu Atwell. And he was a good player. But, yeah, listen, again, I go back to – I remember – coming in, 2 years ago, me and Mark doing a Seminole sidelines before we joined Rivals, and we were talking about what we'd like to see as just a team that will fight for 60 minutes. All right, so we've gone for a team that we've gone from a program 4 years ago that we saw no fight to a team that fights to the bitter end and overcomes adversity. And I don't know what more you could want from a group of 18 to 22-year-old young men. And football's a competitive game, and that was not a slouch program they just beat.
Yeah. Looking through the comments, Fish, I guess in the offseason for Florida State, they've addressed some needs for sure. There's still more that needs to get done. And again, I'm looking in these comments. Secondary needs work. D-line needs some work. Where do you want to see Florida State improve? I know you were texting us again in the middle of the game that the Noles in the trenches could use a boost going into 2023.
They've got to get better at D-tackle because, listen, once you have the film out there, you have 12 games, 13 games that teams can see and they can expose you. They have all offseason now. This is how teams are going to attack Florida State. They're going to attack them in the middle. If you're soft up the middle, that's not a good thing in college football. I will tell you. Yeah. If there's one place you don't want to be soft is in that middle. They showed some flaws in games that Lovett didn't play. And listen, people keep bringing Lovett up. He's a good player. He ain't Corey Simon. Right. He's not one of these Timmy Jernigan. He's not one of these superstar players. I mean, I saw him when he played this year. He was good, but it wasn't like he was dominating games that there should be this much of a drop-off when he's not in there. Maybe he's a crutch for that defense and he's an anchor, but they need to find somebody next year, at least 2 guys. I don't care if it's Tiafasi, if it's the kid from Homestead they got last year. They have to be good there because if they're not good there, teams are going to expose them. And that's LSU's going to run the ball straight up the gut. Mario at Miami, he's trying to build up that O-line to try to get better running up the gut. That's how Florida and Billy Napier, these guys, that's where they're not as good as Florida State. So where are they going to try to find that weakness or that chink? It's in that middle of that defense. Yep. And you don't want to be weak in that middle of that defense, especially when you have the the expectations next year, playing for conference championships. If they're going to play for an ACC title, they have to get better in the middle of that defense.
Yeah, listen, and they've taken some steps in that already. They've got the commitment from Fisk, and obviously have signed Darrell Jackson from Miami. And Mike's alluded to the fact that they're not done in the portal yet, and certainly they could use some help on the defensive line. And if First leaves, you'll need some more help on the edge. Obviously, as we saw tonight with contain issues. And then listen, they're going to have to bring in some. I know they got Blake Nicholson and DeMarco Ward coming in as freshmen, but I also think they need to go out and get another playmaking linebacker to add more depth to that room, and hopefully another starting caliber linebacker, because you're only going in with 6 scholarship players that aren't freshmen next year. So listen, we said going into the end of the season that this was a flawed football team, but it's a flawed football team that figured out a way to win 10 games.
Bethune and Deloach, guys, now a full season with Bethune. Deloach, I thought, made major improvements from where he was a year ago, certainly 2 years ago. How do you guys feel about those two leading the charge again for next season for the Noles, and trying to continue to get better in Fuller's scheme?
I mean, those two are great, but you can't go – listen, they've been very fortunate this year, and Pat will tell you this, and you got to cross your fingers. They stayed very healthy at positions that were important. Yes, Verse had his moments, and Lovett had their moments, but Bethune, as many times he took guys on, staying healthy, Deloach staying healthy. You need these guys to stay healthy, and what you need is, especially in games that you're going to blow teams out next year, you want guys that are getting experience so they could build some depth there. 2 guys isn't enough at linebacker. Let's be honest. Brennan Gant tried his butt off this year. He moved up from safety, but he's not a natural linebacker. He's an undersized kid. He's more of a depth piece. They're going to have to bring some guys in there. And it's not going to be freshmen. It's a lot of things you have to ask. It's one of the harder positions because they have to have assignments. They have a lot of stuff that linebackers are in control of. These guys aren't ready to take on that responsibility this year. You could get them in blowouts and stuff, but they do need at least 1 or 2 more pieces at linebacker. I'm disappointed, and I think Pat maybe even follow up. I thought the secondary coming into last year and this year was going to be a lot better. And you saw points this year. They covered up those problems. I think on the kid that made what's Ontario, I can't
Cooper.
think of his.
Amari
Cooper. He's been a big loss. You could see he made a great play making that turnover. How many DBs have made turnovers this year? You want those guys that not only are they sound in coverage, but they also make those big plays. FSU didn't have a lot of big plays in that secondary. I don't know how many turnovers they had on the year, but they need more guys on that back end when they do get pressure, that we getting turnovers, when you get the short fields, it helps the offense out. You win ball games on short fields. I don't care who it is. You don't want your offense to always have to go 80, 75, 80, 90 yards to score. You want short fields. You get that from pressure up front, and you get that from your defensive secondary making plays. Linebackers, when was the last time really you saw a linebacker drop back in coverage, pick a ball off, and go for a touchdown? So there's things, listen, like Pat said, we can nitpick. It's a great season, but we're talking about how does this team get better? And I'm not being critical of the team. I just want this so the team does get better. You want to make that step. The fans say, how do we make that next step? These little things, all right, are how you make that team a 10-win to an ACC championship team. Having guys, you've seen it at Clemson. How many of those guys always seem to make that key play, that key interception, even against FSU, those game-changing plays that allow you to win these bigger games?
Yeah, and certainly, right, Pat, Florida State had one big game-changing play there in the fourth quarter with the fumble. Jamie falls on the ball, and Noles end up cashing in on it. So, yeah, you're right, though, Fish. I think that's going to be the next step for FSU. I know people have their question marks about Fuller and how aggressive his scheme is versus is it, too passive. I don't know. I think that debate's going to rage on deep into the offseason and into next year. But the better the players, I think that makes a coach look and scheme look even better no matter what. But thoughts on what Salva just dropped in there in terms of OU's offense and the way that they put a lot of pressure on Florida State's defense tonight.
You could go, Pat.
Yeah, well, yeah, certainly. I mean, and then when you get the success running the ball, as we said, it opens up opportunity in the pass game. We saw Mims take advantage of that. And listen, they hit more big pass plays in the second half than you would like, but they were running the ball so well that was going to happen. And it was about making one more play at the end of the day than the other team, and they found a couple more. And listen, when you're playing these types of programs, it's not about 7 or 8 plays or 10 plays. It's about 2 or 3. And that's, we could go back into this game. Florida State will find 3 plays in this game when they watch the film where they could have won the game more handily. Oklahoma's going to find tape where they could have 3 or 4 plays could have changed the outcome for them. And when you're playing quality opponents, and I know everybody looks at Oklahoma's record and says 6-6, but listen, this was the 18th ranked offense in the nation. This, despite all of it, despite how badly their defense was, this was a good offense coming into the game. They were, I think, 13th of the nation in rushing offense, averaging 213. Obviously, they gained 260 tonight, which is not what everybody wanted to see. But they were able, they were able to overcome that, and that's what good football teams do.
And I think, Pat, you'll agree with this. Listen, Oklahoma's had, 2-3 weeks to prepare for this game. They found the chinks in FSU's armor on defense. We knew what they were, all right, that they had issues stopping the run up the gut, that you had some concerns in the back end. You saw it in the Florida game. When FSU faced a competent passer this year, they did struggle in the passing game. Oklahoma's had 12 weeks of film or whatever they've gotten to find those flaws in that defense, and they exposed them. And now it's your job. They did a better job in the second half of limiting plays after contact. That's where, like I said, Florida State got tackled a guy, brought him to the ground. Maybe it was a 7-yard play, but that 7-yard play didn't become a 20-yard play. You saw less and less plays. I don't know how many times what the difference was in this first and second half, but I thought visually it looked like Florida State's defense limited those bigger plays. Now, there was points in the second half that happened, but not consistently. Like it seemed like the first half, FSU was constantly giving up a 7-yard hitch, and then all of a sudden the guy was going another 10 yards. A guy missed a tackle. It just seemed constantly in the second half the defense was out of sync. They limited those plays, and that's how college football is now. You got to tackle the guy when you have an opportunity, bring him to the ground, and play another day, and that's it.
Well, listen, Florida State was much better on third down, just like the offense was in the second half. Limited them to 3 of 8, 38% on third down. They were 56% on third down in the first half. So they did make some adjustments, particularly on third down, which obviously was key, as was obviously the offense staying hot all game and actually getting really hot in the second half. So, yeah, listen, not a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly they did seem to get better as the game wore on both sides of the ball. Obviously, the offense caught on fire, defense marginally better, but good enough tonight anyway.
Gentlemen, I think that's a good place to put a pin in this one in terms of first impressions. We're going to break down the show, the game in full with Seminole Sidelines. Pat, I know we're excited to have that season recap show where we'll try and have a big name on. Maybe Charlie Ward will join us with Mark Salva. Maybe the whole gang will join us, Fish, and have you on as well to talk Florida State's 2022 season and put a pin in it as we move into the offseason. Looking forward to you're reeling them in.
Hey, yeah, me and Pat made it through the whole season with no blows. We got a couple, no cuts, nothing. We survived each other, and it was great working with you guys this year. You guys did a great job.
Listen, it really was a fun year, and I enjoyed working with everybody from Seminole Sidelines, the first impression, to reeling them in, everything that we do. It's been so much fun. Football team this year, and I think everyone needs to go home or go to their hotel and have something like this, even if it's not the same color as this.
What is that?
Yeah, no, this is Aquafina. It's really is. I'm in the. I'm still in the press box. I'm still in the press box.
Allegedly, Pat. Allegedly, Aquafina.
No. I'm a whiskey guy, not a vodka guy. So I'm heading back to the Hilton to hang out with my brother and have a little bit of fun and enjoy the 10-win season.
Well, you tell your brother I said hello, man.
I will definitely do it. And guys, thanks for joining us as always. Ari, appreciate you putting this together tonight, and wish you could have been down here with us. And Fish, obviously, hope to see you soon, and we will be back. We're going to probably start doing some reeling them ins once the recruiting calendar goes back live after the coaching convention.
No question, man.
Should be fun. Off season, it's just getting started. The Noles are relevant again in the college football landscape, and no one covers them better than the Osceola.com. Make sure you check out our podcast, our YouTube channel, subscribe to that, our Instagram, our Twitter, and make sure the rest of tonight you keep typing in the Osceola.com, and Kurt and Pat and Bob and Jerry, I'm sure everybody's hard at work putting together post-game coverage, going to press conferences and getting stories up over the next couple hours and into tomorrow. So Noles 35, Sooners 32. Florida State gets win number 10 on the year, and they have the icing on the cake on a very, very successful season for Mike Norvell. For Charles Fishbein and for Pat Burnham, I want to thank you guys for watching here on Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and we will talk to you soon. I'm Aria Masudi, signing off, and good night. Go Noles, guys.